what is an invocation? And so I looked it up. And Merriam-Webster defines it as a solemn request for help or support. So with that understanding, I contemplated what my request might be as we find ourselves on this day and under these circumstances. Probably no other word has come to my mind in recent days as that of fear. Fears are being expressed everywhere. Fear of disease, fear of economic collapse, fear of tyranny, fear of loss of both our loved ones and our lifestyle. James Neal Hollingsworth, who was also known as Ambrose Redmoon, said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important." Should you choose to do so, please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you this evening with a solemn request for your help and support. As we address the business and issues of our county, help us to realize what is most important. Lord, we know that you have not given us a spirit of fear, but one of power and of love and of a sound mind. Grant each of us the courage and the wisdom to act accordingly. We pray for our leaders throughout our nation, O God, not just our elected leaders, but those in emergency management, healthcare, government, public safety, and law enforcement. Look favorably upon those throughout the engineering and research community as they seek ways to reduce suffering and bring an end to this health crisis. Lord, we know there are many who are suffering physically, financially, and emotionally. Your peace passeth all understanding. Shelter each of them with your love and grace. In the name of Christ, I offer this prayer. Amen. Amen. Please join me for the prayer. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our meeting, I want to make sure we are conducting it properly. So, Jason, would this be the time to share your information?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, what you have before you this evening for potential action are two rules. One to allow remote meeting, and the second to allow remote participation of the public in any public hearings that we might have. We have had some very recent legislative activity on this front. We have, along with the Attorney General's office and the School of Government, our office has also concluded that we've always had the ability to conduct electronic meetings. However, that was clarified late this morning, and in addition, there are some procedures that are specified that largely align with what we put in place for our last meeting. Nonetheless, even though all of you are here physically present this evening, the notice that went out to the public mentioned remote participation and remote participation in a public hearing. Therefore, what is in front of you is in conformity with that notice that went out, even though our attendance circumstances here are entirely physical with the members of the board. This is an action to approve these two rules for this meeting only to enable us to conform with not only our meeting notice, but the state statutes that we're signing along today. Commissioner Rushing.
So a member of the public could call in and express their views in public hearing?
They may, yes. I believe we did not have anyone sign up to do that, but that option was available to them, either telephone, video conference, or to submit written comments.
How would they sign up?
They would contact the clerk's office.
So we sent that notice out and the telephone number to call?
Yes, sir.
And online, they could also sign up.
They could also sign it online, yes, sir.
Jason, am I correct? This is item 22 under old business?
Yes, sir. This is item 22 that the board is taking as its first item in order to enable the rest of the meeting.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Takes us to item 3, public hearings. Public hearing concerning establishment of proposed fire and rescue service districts.
last steps before we can implement the new fire tax districts is to have a public hearing to give the public a chance to comment on the formation of those districts. Catherine, can you go to the next slide? Catherine, can you go to the next slide? Just to give you an idea of where we are in the process, tonight we will have a public hearing. At your next board meeting, there will be a series of resolutions that establish these fire tax districts and abolish the fee districts. The budgets for the fire departments will be presented as part of Mark's recommended budget, and then the tax districts will go into effect July 1. Catherine, can you go to the next slide? This is a map of all the current fee districts that will be converted to tax districts. In addition to that, this also includes the Hemby Bridge District, which will pick up all those outlying properties that have not been paying for that service in the past. You will see there are a few that are not on there. Mineral Springs, Waxhaw, and Stallings, their districts are not changing, and they already have tax districts in place, so that is why they are not on the map. So I can answer any questions you all may have, but again, this is to give the public a chance to comment on the formation of these tax districts. Yes, sir.
My understanding is that you have the concurrence of all the municipalities.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
These fall in.
We have received municipal consent from all affected municipalities.
In the form of a resolution
Yes, sir.
that you hang on your wall.
Most of them.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing. We have no one to sign up, and so I will close the public hearing. Thank you, Patrick.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Informal comments. Again, I believe we have no one to sign up for informal comments. So we'll move to additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, you have a proclamation request from the Union County Chamber
Yes.
supporting their small business, Union County Small Business Strong initiative.
We will make that item 26.
You want to add a closed session?
It is recessed.
Do we need to?
We need to note the closed session. No. For the benefit of the public, we were in closed session earlier. We simply recessed, and we'll continue following this meeting.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item is consent.
Motion to approve consent as presented.
We have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Takes us to old business.
Item number 22, just.
That was the only one, so takes us to new business. South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees appointment. Term for Commissioner Frank Akins on the South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees expires on June 30. South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees is recommending appointment of Commissioner Simpson for this position for a 4-year term beginning July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to suspend Rule 32 of the Board of Commissioners Rules and Procedures relating to this vacancy and appoint Commissioner Jerry Simpson to serve on the South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees for a 4-year term beginning July 1st, 2020, as recommended by the South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Helms. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 24, fiscal year 2020 third quarter financial update.
Mr. Chairman, we have with us Deputy County Manager Michelle Lancaster and Budget Director Blake Hart, who will be presenting the third quarter financial update. And Michelle, if you will.
Thank you. Just some brief comments before Blake gives his update. So, as you know, and I said at the last meeting, things are a little different than when we originally started putting our recommended budget together. So tonight, Blake is gonna provide an update on our current year and our estimates of year end, as well as some information regarding our FY '21 budget. He will provide a review of our calendar, and one of the things that we are gonna ask the board, or I'm gonna ask the board, is to have a budget workshop on May the 18th prior to your next board meeting. At that time, we would like to give you updates and share information on specific items, specifically our facilities funding strategy that you endorsed for this current year. We would like to give you an update on how that has gone and what we plan to include in the manager's recommended budget for FY '21. We would also like to talk a little bit about new and renovated facilities that we believe will be coming online in FY '21 and our plan for handling those operational impacts going forward. We would also like to talk about the new process that we implemented for community partner funding. You'll remember that we had an open application process, which was new to the community. So talk to you about the applicants that we got, and again, the recommendation that we would be making and the manager's recommended budget for dealing with those community partner applications. We would also like to brief you on an item. We have the group home that is ran by the Department of Social Services currently, and we have been in discussions with the state to lease that facility from us and operate it. So we would like to give you an update on that and where we stand and why we think that is a good plan going forward into FY '21. And then we would also like to talk about the UCPS budget, because we will have received that at that point and have some idea of how we think the board should take up that particular request. And so at this time, I'll just ask Blake to come up and give you the presentation, then we can take questions following that.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. Chairman Simpson, Manager Watson, members of the board. It's my pleasure to be with you today and share some information about the county's budget and the fiscal progress we made this year. If you go to the next slide, Catherine, thank you. Today we're going to talk about revenues, expenses. I have some information here. Oh, let me pass around this information. I'm sorry. I have a handout, my presentation. There you go. And this is a copy of the performance report. There you go. All right. I want to give you a general overview of where we are through the year. A few weeks ago, we finished the 9th month of the fiscal year, which is 3/4 of the fiscal year. So we're able to make some educated assumptions or educated guesses on where we'll finish the fiscal year with our revenues and our expenses. That'll be the bulk of my discussion today. And then we'll also talk about the impact on the FY '20 budget, the impact of COVID-19 on the economy, on the county budget, and also on departmental budgets. We'll do a quick wrap up on that. And then we'll move on. All right, thank you. Okay, go to the next slide, Catherine. Thank you. This slide corresponds to the page in your packet. This should be the first or second slide in your packet. This is our chart of accounts of our revenues. If you look at the top, it begins with our ad valorem taxes and fees. If you look at the far right of the chart, you'll see the amended FY '20 budget. The next column is the projected column. Those are where I projected we'll end the year with those revenues, what our collection rate will be through the end of the year. And then the percentage there to give you an idea, an indicator of how we'll finish up there. The first one is ad valorem collections. You'll see at the top right the expected collection rate for FY '20 based on 9 months of data is 99.9%. That's in line with previous years. We like to get it up to 101, 102% if we can. Right now we're on track for 99.9%. Hopefully we can get a little bump at the end of the year to get up to 100 if possible. Our next is sales tax, which we'll talk about sales tax later on in the presentation when we talk about the impact of the COVID virus on the county budget. Before the virus hit, we were on track to collect 100.2% budget on our local sales tax, which is dead on. You can't shoot an arrow much straighter than that. We were on track to get that. We'll discuss the variations here and the deviation from that budget at this point based on the...
Mr. Chairman, can I call for a quick, maybe 1 minute recess? Just ask for a quick, I just need to speak to Lynn about something. This is important to the meeting. I don't know that people can hear us.
Everyone in favor?
Yeah. Blake, I don't know, the microphone is right here in the center of the room.
Let me stand up.
So why don't you just stand up
Yeah,
here?
I think it'd be a good
I don't know how that's gonna look on the video, but I think that if you were standing pretty close to this, see it right there, see, there you go.
Okay, how's that? All right.
Just speak up.
Okay. All right. Well, let's continue. Thank you. The local option sales tax, as I was saying, we're on track. We were on track 6 weeks ago before the virus hit to collect 100.2% of local option sales tax. That's changed as of now, and that's reflected in the percentage collection here on the chart. It's in the second line, and you'll see we're expected to collect 93.1% of the total sales tax through the end of the year, which is about a 7% decrease from where we were hoping to be earlier on in the year. It's a 7% decrease throughout if you annualize it over the entire year. From March through June to the end of the year, it's a 20% decrease in the collection is what we're expecting. And we'll talk more about some of the assumptions that play into that. A quick reminder before we get into more detail also, the sales tax that we receive is split into 3 different buckets. Every dollar we receive in sales tax, we share with, we dedicate 30% of to pay for school debt, which is in the general fund. We pass on about 2% to the fire departments that are tax districts, and we keep about 68%. So that's the rough breakout of how that sales tax collection breaks out and is distributed locally. If we look on to intergovernmental revenue, we're expecting to collect about 105%, which is above budget. That's good. There's a few areas where we're expected to come in above budget. That helps out in a few areas that may be below. Investment revenue is variable, as you know, as you've watched the markets, the bond market, the stock market. You'll see there have been great fluctuations and losses in those areas. Investment revenue last year in FY19, we were very happy to collect $1 million more than what our budget was. Our budget was $1.5 million. We collected $2.5 million based on market conditions, which had been ramping up quite a bit, and we benefited from that. In the current year, our budget is still 1.5. We're hoping we can meet that budget in FY20, and then we are expecting that next year in FY21, we're going to need to reduce the budget accordingly based on the expected losses from the current pandemic. So we're looking at that for next year to see how to handle that. But we're hoping this year that we can meet budget in FY20. Then charges for service. Those are charges that departments have with their clients. We're trending above budget, and this includes a downward adjustment for decreases in revenue that the departments have let us know that they're expecting to see. We sent a survey to each department back in April and asked them, do you know of any revenue decreases that you'll experience based on the pandemic or any increases in expense? And based on that information, I've adjusted the projections to incorporate their expectations since they're the service matter experts in their worlds. Catherine, could you go to the next slide, please? If you turn the page to the next slide, this gives you a closer look at our ad valorem collection over the past 5 or so years. You'll see each blue bar represents the total amount collected at the end of the year. The orange wavy line at the top indicates the collection amount per year. So you'll see for FY20 projected, I'm projecting we'll collect 99.91% of the total ad valorem revenue. Compared to last year in FY19, we collected 99.27. So that's in line with where we were last year. It's a little bit lower than where we had been over previous years, but we're hoping to get back up, to get that collection rate back up to 100, if not 100 plus, to refill some of our fund balance numbers. We can go to the next page, which is sales tax. This is the same view of sales tax. It allows us to drill down a little bit on sales tax. You'll see the far bar on the right again is FY20. My projection through the end of the fiscal year, you'll see the collection rate there at the top of the bar is 93%. Again, that indicates the expected 7% loss in sales tax because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you'll see that the expected collection is lower than what we collected in FY20. So the total amount that we collect in FY19 is going to be more than what we expected for like in FY20 because of the pandemic that we're experiencing. So just to give you a little more information there. Then the next page, we move on to general fund expenditures. We'll talk about expenditures by category. If you start at the top of the chart and go over again, you'll see the projected column at the right and then the expected expense column at the very right. So for example, the employee compensation line at the top, that's employee salaries. We're expecting to expend 96% of employee salaries. Employee benefits about 98%. If you compare that with prior year history in FY19, it's right in line with where we were last year. We expended 96% in compensation and 98% in benefits as well. The most recent vacancy rate for the county for March was 4.5%, which is what generates some of those salaries that are unspent throughout the year. Also, in these numbers, I adjusted downward, actually adjusted upward for the expected savings from the hiring freeze. I believe in your last meeting, County Manager Watson shared with you that we have a hiring freeze in the county to preserve some funds to try and offset the expected loss in sales tax from the virus. The county manager was very proactive in making sure that if we're expecting our revenue to be cut, that we also cut our expense so we can close that gap and finish the year in a positive manner. So that was a good decision to help us remain financially sound. If we look at our operating costs, we're trending down. There's some underspending in utilities, software maintenance, telephone and communications. There could be some fluctuation there depending on utility bills. Sometimes they lag over to the next month. And if that's the case, we would expect it to catch up probably in April and compensate for that. Also, in some of those expenses are lowered because of also the freeze on training and travel, which is another effort to mitigate some of the losses in the sales tax revenue. And also that number is a little bit lower because we've had our facilities closed to the public for 6 weeks. And so usage and facilities, utilities, other expenses is a little lower than what we'd expect normally. And also a lot of staff who are mobile have not been traveling, so the consumption would be a little lower than expected as well. So I think that's driving some of that underspending there. When you compare the two, the overall revenues and expenses, if you look, the red circle there is the expected revenue over expenses at year end. So this is saying that we're expecting to have $1.9 million in revenue over expenses at the end of the year, or 1.01% of the total budget that we would contribite towards our fund balance at the end of the year. So that's a pretty small margin when you look at a budget of our size of just 1% or $2 million to roll into fund balance to help fund some of those other needs. If we go to the next slide, I wanted to give you a quick brief view at the preliminary fund balance calculation. So if you look at the first red circle on this page, you'll recognize that number, 1.9 million, is the number from the previous slide that was the expected revenue over expense for the year. So if we finish the year and these numbers are in the ballpark, then that 1.9 million is what would influence our fund balance addition in FY21. So that number feeds into the total estimated uncommitted, it feeds into the committed reserve, and then on line number 7 is the encumbrance roll, which are expenses or open encumbrances or contracts that are not completed by the end of the year, or open projects, and get moved from FY20 to FY21. And so that's a reduction of what would roll into our fund balance at the end of the year also. And then if you look at line number 8, that $3 million was part of an early debt redemption that we did this year, which was strategic in nature to decrease the cost of debt service in FY20 so that we wouldn't have to, it wouldn't impact the tax rate in FY20. We could keep it stable and keep it from spiking this year. We use fund balance to pay that debt off early so that we can next year have a more stable debt service number there. So that was a strategic use of debt service of $3 million. And when you work your way through all of those, it works out to an expected contribution to fund balance of $581,000. So I wanted to show the relationship between the operating budget year end how that influences the preliminary fund balance number there. And that's how that works itself out. All right. Next slide, Catherine. Thank you. This is a brief history of fund balance in the county over time, going back to 2014. You'll see the second column from the left is the unassigned fund balance amount. And you'll see that number grew quite a bit over the years. And if you go to the very far right, you'll see the total. That's the total fund balance of all designations, unassigned, assigned, committed, restricted, and all in that column. And I wanted to show you at the bottom how that 581 plays into that fund balance number. So it says that if we do end the year with $1.9 million of revenue over expense, then we would expect that we would have $581,000 available to appropriate in the FY21 budget. So that's how those two numbers play into the fund balance calculation and how that rolls from FY20 to FY21 and onward. And one thing that's to note, that the number for at the end of FY20 is $581,000 because we've already used $3 million for an early debt redemption, which helped us save on interest payments and have a more manageable debt portfolio. So if we had not had done that, we would be adding 3.5, which is a number that provides a little more flexibility in the fund balance number. But because we use that in advance, that's why the number is a little lower there to add to the unassigned fund balance number there at the end of FY20. All right.
So we have 90,939 and restricted and committed. What's explain the 90,939,000?
That's the total. So the unassigned amount is the amount that would be above the target number. The committed is the 20% per board policy that we keep on hand, 20% of the ongoing budget. And the restricted is unavailable for use. So all those together make up the total fund balance, which is the total at 90.93.
This includes closing of the landfill. This includes all those required funds that we have to maintain.
The solid waste is an enterprise fund, so this is only in the general
Okay.
fund.
So it's not included.
This would be your economic development fund, those types of things.
Great. All right. Next slide, Catherine. I want to transition a little bit now and talk about the economic impact of the COVID-19 virus that we're all experiencing. Just give a brief overview. On March 16th was when the 15 days to slow the spread began. It seems like a long time ago now, all that we've experienced, but that was on March 16th. March 27th was when the governor enacted his stay-at-home order. Around that time, the Dow Jones lost 37% of its value. It's since gained back 19%, but those were historic losses, and we're seeing some progress now. The number that to me is the most startling is that since mid-March, 750,000 North Carolinians have applied for unemployment benefits in North Carolina. That's a drastic increase from where we were. If you look at the bar chart just below that, that's the weekly filings for unemployment in North Carolina. And I looked at over a longer history, and for the past 3 to 4 years, the weekly number of North Carolinians that applied for unemployment benefits was between 1,500 and maybe 3,500 on a high week. So we went from 2,500 the week of March 7th to 3,500 the week of March 14th to 94,000 the week of March 21st. Then the next week, we went from 94,000 to 172. Those are new applicants, 172,000. The next week, it came down to 137,000, and so on. And that the cumulative number there is 748,000 applications for unemployment benefits. So that's an indicator of where we are in the local economy here in North Carolina. And the numbers by county aren't available yet, but when they are, I'll share those with you to see how it's impacting us. Next slide is more about the economic impacts. The largest impact of the COVID-19 virus in the county will be to county sales tax. The Congressional Budget Office predicts some strong growth in the last quarter of this year, October and December. We're hoping that that's true. We know we're going to be suffering a little bit through this portion of the year, through the summer. Hopefully in the late fall, at the end of the year, we can see some growth to start to swing out of the downturn that we're in now. The CBO also projects 2020 GDP contraction or negative growth of 2%. And projections of national unemployment rate are around 15%. I've seen some up to 20%. Hopefully it won't reach that high. The League of Municipalities here in North Carolina and the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners have published some guidance for counties on what expectations they should have as far as loss of sales tax. Given the timing that we're in, we know there's a 3-month lag from when you conduct a transaction in a retail store from when our portion of that sales tax comes into the county coffers. So anything that happened in March, we won't see hit our books until June. So that doesn't leave us with much time to look at real data and real actuals to make real-time decisions. We have to project and predict what we think the reaction is going to be and try to position ourselves. In considering the guidance of the League of Municipalities and the NCACC, our best estimate for county loss, again, I stated earlier, was 20% loss between March and June, which annualizes to 7% over all of FY20 and is $3.38 million, or $3.4 million is what we would expect to lose from what our adopted budget was in FY20. And again, all of these moving targets are happening while we're building the manager's recommended budget, and we're working towards adopting a budget within 5 to 6 weeks. So there's a lot of moving parts happening during this time. We're trying to balance all these changing numbers. Next slide, Catherine. All right, this slide shows the expected decrease, the expected loss in sales tax I mentioned before. If you look at the chart and you go all the way to the right, each bar represents a year. So the blue bar on the left of each cluster is 2017. The dark orange bar is FY18, gray is 19, and yellow is 20, and so on and so forth. If you go to the very far right, you'll see the two final bars. The largest blue bar represents what we were expecting to collect before the virus hit in March. That represents 100.2% of total collections of the adopted budget for sales tax. The yellow portion represents the new estimate, or the 7% revised down estimate, and that red block there represents the $3.4 million that is evaporated or vanished into thin air. That's to give you some scale of where we were expecting to be and where we expect we'll be now. I also want to mention the split, the relationship between sales tax, the county, schools, and the volunteer fire departments. If we receive $100 in sales tax, the county benefits from that 68%. So we would have $68 to support county services, general county services. Then we would take $2, pass it on to the volunteer fire departments as their portion, and then the $30, or the difference, we dedicate towards school debt service, because we have school debt on the county books that we are obligated by statute to pay for. By statute, the first thing that we do with the first dollar that we bring in is pay debt service. So before the county can pay the first paycheck, or pay the first light bill, or the first benefit, we have to make sure we have enough to cover all of the required debt service, whether it's county or school. So in the event that we revise our numbers down, or we decrease the expected sales tax receipts, we still have to make up that difference to cover school debt service. We don't have And that results in pressure towards county services or county departments because we can't pass that on to schools operationally in this scenario. So for every dollar that we collect, we have to apply it towards school debt service, and when there's a deficit, that dollar has to come away from a county department, a county service, a county program.
What's the current county school debt?
I don't know.
I was reading your mind. I was just looking that up because I thought somebody
It's a
might
short
ask
story, wasn't it?
that question. No, it's a very good question. I'm reading on my phone, so give me a-
Would it be 30% of 40?
No, it's a much larger number than that.
Your question, you're 3.38 million you're short. That's the total sales tax before you divvy it up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Just through the end of the year.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Their expectations are that there would be a corresponding deficit next year in FY '21 that would have a similar breakdown or ratio across the three groups.
The current outstanding principal for UCPS is $279,879,715.
Thank you.
All right. Next slide.
And just real quick, so we're doing 30% of sales tax goes into that, paying that debt now. So 14 million a year, 15 million a year.
Yeah. And that's by statute. The different sales tax articles we have, we're obligated to do, I believe it's 30% of one and 60% of the other is the calculation that equals out to about 30%. All right. The next slide is a different representation of the same issue. This is a monthly receipt comparison in a line chart. And if you look at the blue line, that represents FY18 collections. The orange line represents FY19. The red line represents FY20, but in two scenarios. If you follow the red line up to May, you'll see that it splits into a black line and a red line. The black line was our original estimate of what we would collect for sales tax. The red line is the revised downward estimate showing what the negative $3.4 million that we expect to not receive. So the area under the black line and above the red line represents $3.4 million that we expect to not have. And again, in response to that, the county manager was very proactive in cutting expense or enacting a hiring freeze, and also a freeze on travel and training to preserve some of that budget to help us weather this reduction in sales tax. All right, next slide. Thank you. This is just a representation of the chart that we've been following with bated breath over the past several weeks of the COVID virus. I just wanted to show this to show kind of where we are on the curve, the expected curve, and to say that the sooner that the economy reopens and the sooner that people are in the street and in restaurants and in malls and in public spaces, the sooner the impact, the smaller the impact of the county's overall budget, because that means more transactions will be happening, more sales are happening, and eventually that money will filter down to us on the back end. So whenever we're in it, and of course safety first, public health is the primary concern, but the sooner that happens, we'll see quicker returns in the marketplace, and those will come back to the county budget in a timely fashion. All right, next slide. I wanted to talk quickly about the economic impact to county departments. I mentioned earlier that we gave a survey to department directors back in April and asked them to give us an idea of any expected losses in revenue or expected increases in expense that they felt like would impact their operations based on the virus. The chart you see here is shows the net impact. So you see emergency management, the estimate we had there was that they would see an increase in expense of about $55,000 that they had not budgeted for, because no one, this was a surprise to all of us, that the impact to their budget will be about $55,000 through the end of this fiscal year. Now that doesn't take into account anything that may roll over into the next fiscal year. But that's emergency management. Environmental health is about $100,000, which would be losses in permitting fees because of the close down or because of delays in getting those done. Facilities was an increase in expense of about $25,000 because of additional custodial services, cleaning supplies, any variation, any modifications to workspaces to make sure we have a clean, healthy, safe environment for employees to return to. And you'll see the big one there is Park and Rec, and that is the vast majority are park fees for Cane Creek being closed. They stay full through the summer, through spring breaks, and that's the estimate of revenue that has been, most of it has been returned already to folks who made reservations early in the year.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
When are our parks coming to open back up?
This Saturday,
This Saturday,
7 a.m.
7 a.m. and with social distancing and
Social, there'll be some communication that's coming out, the activities that will be open and social distancing. Look forward to the campground opening, boat ramps, trails, picnic shelter, picnic tables, that type of thing.
Hopefully we'll be able to revise this number down the farther we go along in the year, so the impact won't be quite as much. Next slide, Catherine. Thank you. I wanted to give you an update on building permits. To date, we talked about this when we had the economic overview back in December, I think the last time we were together. I wanted to just give you an idea of how they're performing. If you look to the very far right of the chart, that last bar on the right represents March. The number of permits that have been submitted, and the red line represents the total value of those permits. So you'll see there's some significant growth in FY20, and if you walk that back to February and March of previous years, it's also consistent growth over those years. And the word that we have is that there's no indication that this would slow necessarily in the near term because of the virus. If this continues to be a prolonged stagnation, it could impact that, but hopefully it'll be a relatively short duration. It won't impact building and code over the long term.
are we believing we'll see an increase maybe in people fleeing high congested areas to areas like Union County?
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't doubt it. Next slide is I wanted to show you some information about the registered deeds revenue and show you a 3-year comparison. This is a cumulative comparison over 4 fiscal years. And again, if you go to the far right of your chart, you'll see that collections are significantly above previous years, where this time last year they had collected just under $900,000, and to date through March they've collected $1.1 million. So that's a positive sign, it's possible it could slow if the downturn continues over the long term. It could affect that, but as of now, things are moving in the right direction. Next slide. Then I want to talk a little bit about Health and Human Services. As you can imagine, Health and Human Services is seeing the brunt of the influx of clients and customers and the increase in demand for services. This is a chart that shows the monthly applications for food and nutrition services or food stamps and Medicaid services. And you'll see the blue line represents food and nutrition services. The increase from March and April was 99%. So in March, there were 549 new applications for food stamps, and in April, that number was just under 1,100. So that was a 100% increase over the previous month. I would assume that when we get information for the next month, it'll show consistent growth there as well. What I think is very impressive about this number, and others we'll talk about for human services, is that they're dealing with this influx of clients with a closed building. They've moved all their operations to via phone, via internet, via a web conference, and email. And so they're dealing with this huge increase in demand in a virtual world, and they're doing it successfully. So I wanted to give them some positive accolades there. Next slide. This is regarding the county's Medicaid Transportation, which are trips, van trips for seniors to go shopping, go to doctor's appointments, be in the community, go to congregate meal sites, and show the impact there. The demand for service for Medicaid Transportation has decreased significantly between March and April, and there's several reasons for that. One is, these are mostly seniors, and because of the intricacies of the virus, they're safer at home, and so that's decreased the demand. Also, a big portion of these trips were to doctor's offices, or to congregate meal sites, or for shopping, and all of those areas are closed also. So there just hasn't been a demand for service there. But I wanted to show you how drastic that is, that folks are staying home, and the county is doing our part to support folks being at home and helping them do that. Also, to share that there's a new protocol for cleaning the vans, that each night they're scrubbed, they're sanitized to make sure that they're clean and ready and safe for any trips they do have the next day. Next slide. All right, this is senior nutrition, meals per month. Again, if you go all the way to the far right, you'll see the increase of March and April. And the increase from March to April was 21% in senior meals. That's a significant increase due to the current circumstances. Congregate sites have been closed, and so the majority of deliveries are meal deliveries for clients, allowing seniors to shelter in place during this time. And a positive for this also is that the increase in meals has been covered by a combination of non-county funding from Families First, CARES Grant, and CDBG funds that Human Service has received. So the county has not yet borne the cost of those increased meals for seniors. All right. Next slide. Great. I wanted to give you a quick update on where we are, our assumptions for the FY21 budget. We know that the jobs, so this is the top part of this slide is a look back to the last time we were together in December. We did an economic overview and talked about the expectations we had for FY21 based on current economic conditions and those prior, which things were great. Things were great then. The jobs report, the most recent one at that time, had added 266,000 jobs to that month, and the headline was that jobs report had squashed lingering concerns of an imminent recession. That was a little bit too early to make that comment, apparently. The national unemployment rate then was 3.5%. The county unemployment rate was 3.1%, and the state unemployment at that time was 3.5%. The Dow had recently passed 28,000, and inflation was below 2%, and consumer confidence was high. The average hourly wage increases were 3.1% over the previous year. Wages were rising, and 60% of employers plan to add positions in 2020, and only 4% were planning reductions. I think we could probably say those numbers are a mirror image of each other now. There were newly created jobs in every sector of the economy, and the strong economy was making hiring new workers difficult because there was so much demand for workers in all sectors that recruiting talented and good people was difficult. And again, that's an indicator that has completely flipped during this time period as well. Some of these assumptions have changed in that the rising unemployment rate is now for the U.S. 4.4%. That's due to a lag in the timing. As soon as the new numbers come out, that'll be significantly higher than 4.4%. Some estimations are as high as 15%, some have said 20%, but we'll have to wait until those numbers come out to really see that. Nationwide, 30 million American workers have filed for unemployment claims since the virus impacted us. And again, 750,000 North Carolinians have filed for unemployment since March 14th.
Have you seen a breakdown of, are those, how many of those are in the service and hospitality industry?
I would assume the majority. I haven't seen a breakdown by sector yet. I think that'll be coming. And as soon as I have it, I'll share it with you by sector. If I were to wager a guess, I would say that around the state areas that are hit the hardest are, the beach areas, the mountains where they depend so much on tourism for a big portion of their sales tax revenue and visitation. Fortunately, we're not as dependent on tourism for revenue, and so we're a little bit more protected than, say, some of those vacation communities are. For some context, during the Great Depression, in the highest unemployment rate that the U.S. has ever seen in recorded history was in 1933, when it was 25%. During the Great Recession in 2009, the peak was 10%. And so, the estimates that are coming out now are somewhere between the Great Recession of 2009 and the Depression of 1933. So hopefully, these are worst case scenarios, and we can work through those, and we can get back to some sense of normalcy. But that's what's floating around in the atmosphere. The Dow Jones dropped from a high of 29,551 to the low of 18,600, and it's recovered now to about 23,000. So we're seeing some positive signs there. All right, next slide, Catherine. Let's see. Okay, so here's some of the budget assumptions for FY21 that we're working with that are revised from when we talked in December. When we began the process, the penny value, we were estimating 3% growth for the penny value. We've actually been able to increase this to 3.2%, and that's based on assessed valuations from the tax office. They've seen some stronger growth numbers since we began this discussion back in October, November. So we've been able to increase that value, which benefits us. It also benefits the schools. It benefits EMS, anyone that shares in a tax rate. The local sales tax growth has been revised down. When we began this process, we were planning a 4.5% increase to sales tax in FY21, and that really was probably a little bit conservative because the prior year percent growth was 6%, and so but for the pandemic, we were on track to see some significant growth, which would have helped us overall. The adjusted rate is from 4.5% growth to 1.5% growth from the prior year adopted budget, which that's based on the guidance we've had from the CBO that says towards the middle part of next year and the end of next year, we should see significant growth in the marketplace because things will have opened up, folks will have moved back into their employment, and the employment numbers will have come down, and the growth in the marketplace should be significant to help us in that area. Again, the expected loss in sales tax from pre-COVID-19 is about $3.4 million. Departments have been notified to expect a continuation budget for FY21 or to say a no-growth budget. There's little to no opportunity for enhancement or service expansion given the current scenario. The opportunity to fund contingencies is not available. There will be difficult decisions required to balance the budget to a flat tax rate for the proposed budget. So when you take a few steps back and look at the entire picture from 6 weeks ago to 6 months ago to now, the landscape has changed considerably, and so we're trying to be proactive to Wayne Gretzky had a great quote where he said, "Don't skate to where the hockey puck was, skate to where it will be." And that's what we're trying to do, is not react to where we think the economy is going to be tomorrow, but react to where it's going to be in 2 months, in 6 months, and a year from now. So that's what we're looking at. The balancing the budget may require tax rate revenue realignments between funds and partners. Balancing the budget may require extending the current hiring freeze into FY21 to maintain some of those savings. Opportunity to access unassigned fund balance will be very limited. And we're looking for opportunities to find efficiencies within the budget now, and looking for opportunities to maximize revenue options to make sure we don't leave any money on the table for possible revenues, and focus on supporting and maintaining core and critical services in FY21. All right, next slide, Catherine. Then from there, I wanted to talk briefly about the revised budget calendar. We're getting back to work, budget work now. Michelle mentioned, I think the 18th will be a budget workshop, and we're working towards the manager's proposed budget presentation on June 1st. And the goal is to provide you with the recommended document on the Friday before then. We have a meeting on the 1st, so we're going to try and get that to you on the Friday before then at the very latest, so you have the weekend to review that. And then hopefully to have a public hearing on the 15th and budget adoption on that day as well. There's some fluctuation available in that timing, but I wanted to give you an idea of where we are on the timeline. Closing thoughts are, with every additional month of data, we have a better projection. We can refine where we think we're going to be and have a soft landing. Projections are in line with expectations, considering the impact of COVID-19 on sales tax. Again, this goes without saying, but it's not just us experiencing this. This is the entire world going through this situation. As more information becomes available, it will be included in our next update or projection, and we'll be working towards our upcoming budget workshop on the 18th. That's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you, Blake.
Yeah, thank you.
Item 25, 2020, field stormwater grant application.
We have Brian Matthews. Jordan. Okay. Jordan, if you'll join us right up here at the front of the room.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Manager Watson. We have an update on the presentation that was given to you 2 weeks ago regarding a grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation for a stormwater study in Union and Lancaster counties. We have a title now. It's called Building a Resilient Carolinas. Next slide, Catherine.
Jordan, can I get you to move over that way just a little bit? There you go. Everybody that's not standing there staring at your back.
Will do. Okay, so again, this is a grant program through the U.S. Department of Transportation. The application is 2 weeks from today. This is a nationwide solicitation, includes capital grants as well as planning applications. Sometimes planning grants aren't eligible, but this cycle they are. And we would find out in October of this fall and would not incur any expenses until FY22 at the earliest, because it'll take several months of contract work with the Department of Transportation, then solicitation. So it won't be until mid-21 that any work was actually underway. Next slide. So the study area, this is a map of all the flooded areas from Hurricane Florence. This has several phases. Total budget has been revised now that we do have the consultant under contract with us. Kept it to under $1 million. They did see that we would get more value by spending more money than the initial estimate of $750,000. So you have your data collection, analysis of up to 200 locations throughout the study area, both Lancaster and Union counties, looking at identified projects, locations, what would improve the flow, specific bridges, culverts, things like that, and then policy recommendations, what kind of ordinance language would be appropriate for the municipalities and counties to consider in their respective development regulations to help keep ahead on the flow of water off of new development as occurs in both counties. So that is the budget, $995,000, which is important because then that trickles into the next slide, which is the local match requirements that we've broken down between Union County, Lancaster County, and the municipalities in Union County. So we've received resolutions of support already from Lancaster County and Indian Trail. If we get approval from the board tonight, we would send this out with the resolution language and financial commitment language to each of the jurisdictions. The amount that would be requested total from the municipalities and the counties, $199,000. Lancaster County is about 15% of the study area, but due to the fact that there's a little more complication by involving another state, another DOT, we upped their share to 20%. They agreed with that, so that's where the 40% comes from. The other jurisdictions, it's a combination of their study area, how many square miles are in their jurisdiction, as well as their population and population density. So Fairview, if you were to look at them based on square miles, they'd have a large share, but because they're so low density, really their impact is much less. The opposite's true for Indian Trail. They're not only high population, but high density as well, so they have a higher share, and they understand that. So this represents a breakdown of that. Union County is less than half by a couple percentage points of the overall local match commitment. The two largest members, Lancaster County and Indian Trail, are okay with these dollar figures. The other jurisdictions have been made aware of the range of what was being requested, so these aren't going to be surprises when they're sent to them as soon as this meeting ends. But
John, where's Waxhaw?
I'm sorry?
Where's Waxhaw?
Waxhaw chose not to participate. And so these are the jurisdictions that would participate. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be study done in Waxhaw or any of the other jurisdictions, frankly. I mean, you can't not study those areas. You're kind of getting a free ride. There's no way we can get around that. The study area and the basins are what they are. So these are the jurisdictions that would be financially contributing to the study. They also wouldn't have their commitments come due until FY21 or 22 based on how we decide to come up with the interlocal agreements for match share. So next slide, Catherine.
Wait a minute, I
Yes,
have
sir.
a question. So by Waxhaw not choosing to participate, that made everybody else's part go up a little bit? Or
That's one way of looking at it. Yes, sir.
so Waxhaw, do you have any idea of what it would have been that they chose not to do?
You know, Waxhaw is probably similar in complexity as, say, Stallings. So you're talking about, you know, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. So maybe everyone would have saved $1,000. I mean, we had over 2/3 of the municipalities in the county participate, but not all.
Are you sure about that? Because with Middle Springs at 4,000, I would think Waxhaw was more than double it.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. That's just a guess. I'm saying they're similar to Stallings in their complexity and size. So, you know, we put it out, and these are the responses we received. Any other questions on this slide? Okay, next slide, please. So, two actions are being requested. One is to commit to the match. That's the second one. That would occur in FY22 and 23. I paid close attention to Blake's presentation. It wasn't as dire as I thought it was going to be when I found out it was immediately after the financial presentation. And the first request is to actually authorize us to submit the application that we hope to do next Friday to make sure that we don't hit it right on the last day and find out there's some sort of technical issue with the submittal. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You said Waxhaw didn't respond?
No, they responded that they didn't want to participate. Everyone responded, they just responded they didn't want to participate.
So they got a free pass.
If we get awarded this study, yes, because a lot of the roads that are NCDOT maintained go through the town of Waxhaw, so there may be recommendations. I mean, 12 Mile Creek goes right through there, so it's very likely there will be some recommendations through there, but that's the situation.
Is there an opportunity for Waxhaw to get back into the study at a later date?
We would certainly want them to participate. And if they had a change of heart regarding the money, that would potentially change our local match that we would share with all the others. So yeah, there's a potential for that. Same would hold true for Unionville or Marshville.
So Bjorn, you're asking for these two in a motion, is that correct?
I am. You have a resolution that would authorize us to submit, and then the commitment of the money for FY '22 and '23.
So moved. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Bjorn, will you follow up with Waxaw and strongly ask them?
Might be above my pay grade, but I can agree.
We've got a new interim town manager, haven't we?
Yes,
No, they got a new manager.
You got a new one now?
be it permanent.
Lisa's their planning director.
Okay.
Permit this week.
Item 26 is a proclamation by the Union County Board of Commissioners proclaiming the week of May 10th through 16th, 2020 as Union County Small Business Strong Week. And I will share that information with you. America's progress has historically been driven by entrepreneurial pioneers who thought big, took risks, and worked hard. And from the storefront shops that anchor our county's main streets to the high-tech companies on the cutting edge, small businesses are the foundational engine of our economy. Our county's small businesses create jobs for our residents, support our community's infrastructure through the tax dollars they pay, enhance the quality of life for all through their donations and volunteer hours in support of nonprofits throughout our community, and their presence preserves the unique culture of our community. And our county's small businesses have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our county small businesses have made substantial sacrifices in the service of Union County residents and fellow small business owners. Our county's small businesses are innovative, creative, and able to not only survive, but also to thrive despite overwhelming obstacles. Union County, North Carolina supports our small businesses in their efforts to safely and successfully return to what they do best, create jobs, and ensure our communities remain economically sound. And the support of our residents and fellow businesses are vital to the appropriate, safe, and successful reopening of our county's small businesses. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that the Union County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of May 10th through May 16th, 2020 as Union County Small Business Strong Week. Make that to a motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very much. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things for the board this evening. One, just to let you know that we will be sponsoring a video conference for our municipalities and other elected officials in the county on the impacts of COVID-19 on the local healthcare system, similar to the conference that we held for commission members last week. Second, just to let you know, we are adjusting our schedule for opening county facilities to the general public. We are still in the process of working through that, but the schedule is significantly shortened, and we will be releasing additional detailed information to you later this week. We need to have some meetings with staff before we make that information public. That's all I have for you this evening.
Mr. Akins.
I have no comments this evening.
Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I've received several comments and emails concerning the county commissioners opening up, and what Gaston County did last week kind of confused the issue a little. And I just want people to know that we have to follow state law, just like barbers, just like restaurants. This board is bound, and we are only given our authority through the state. So when it comes to opening businesses, I can tell you that any member on this board, I'm not speaking for the board members, but knowing each one individually, I would think that all of us want this county opened up as soon as possible and as safely as possible. And absolutely any disagreements we have on any other issue, I believe that we want what's best for Union County in this situation. It's time to open this economy back up. I hope that our state legislature will take some action maybe to do something. If it doesn't end this week, and I definitely support opening back up our parks this week. I think that's a great idea, and I think people just need to understand, again, that the county is bound to follow state law, just as every business that's had to close their doors during this. We've been very fortunate, I think, that we haven't seen the issues that are in larger populated areas like New York. But again, viruses are fought in the human body, and it seems like this one is being well taken care of by the vast majority of people. So I hope the governor sees that. I hope the governor sees to open these numbers back up. There was one statement in here about the disease and what it was doing to our economy, and opening back up is going to help fund our schools. It's going to help fund a lot of things. It's going to help save some small businesses, and I feel terrible for the ones that it's not going to save. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harris?
One, I want to thank the manager and executive staff for the way they have approached. We didn't have any employees out of work during this whole process. You're to be commended for that. As Commissioner Rushing said, my email box is filling up with people wanting to go back to normal, and I can assure them that we're doing everything possible. Gaston County proved how not to do it, and so however we are looking at options, we had talking with our senators and our congressional representatives, trying to find ways to move back faster, and I think the manager is demonstrating our intent on that by opening up the county. We appreciate that. I wanted to also thank Crime Stoppers. I had the privilege of participating with Crime Stoppers this past week, and we provided meals for all EMS and our EOC, and they seem to be very appreciative of it, and I want to thank Crime Stoppers for their intent to help our community, and that's all.
Mr. Ray?
I want to echo what Commissioner Rush and Commissioner Hill said. I have got a lot of, I'd say it's probably 30% against opening up, 70% wanting to open up. And what I would tell everybody, it's not really our call. We've been advised by council under a state-ordered state of emergency by the governor. We really don't have a lot of powers. And, but when we do open up, and we will, that will come. If you don't feel comfortable, it's your option. You don't have to come out. And I don't say that carelessly. I'm just, freedom is freedom. And if you choose to wait, that's what I would encourage you to do. But I think we all want to get back to normal as soon as we can. I do appreciate what everybody has done. We're in unbelievable times right now, and I, for one, have no idea what's going on, where we're headed. But I know if we keep focused on, as Jerry said, the higher power of God, we will come through this and know what to do maybe next time.
I have a question and a couple of comments. Question is the financial information that we received this evening on the county website?
Not yet, but I'm sure we can get
It
it.
will be, okay?
Certainly as part of the video of this meeting, but
Good.
we can make that available under a separate tab.
And I ask that to say thanks to the county's financial staff for that information. We could be in a lot worse shape, so based on circumstances.
We're in good shape.
So I appreciate that. Thanks to them. The other thing relative to some of the comments that have already been made, I too have received some of those emails, and their questions are, why are you not doing what some of the other counties are doing, or what Gaston County did, and I'm not gonna pick on Gaston County, but what some of the other counties did. And I will just say this, that as chairman, we, as a board, a unanimous board, sent a letter to the governor, and our request was that we be allowed as a county to make decisions based on information that's applicable to our county. And I would say that I have taken no action without full consultation with Mark and his administrative staff, our health professionals. And so I believe that anything that we have moved in the direction to do has been well thought out and made with information in an intelligent way. So I want to commend Mark and his staff for providing that information. And I too am ready to move forward, look to better days. So at this time, I believe it's okay to offer a motion to adjourn this meeting. All in favor say aye to that. Aye. Thank you very much. We will continue with our closed session.